Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. Today's video, we need to talk about aquarium lighting. I've been getting so many questions about it lately, and I want to go over some things that are going to help you be successful. If you get this right, your tank's going to look awesome. If you don't, you may have some problems. Let's go take a look. So we're down here in the gallery, and I will show you what this looks like in the fish room as well. But I think the first thing you need to identify when it comes to lighting is, what is the purpose? Why are you using an aquarium light? And what I mean by that is, do you have a planted tank like most of the tanks that you're seeing here in the gallery? Or is your tank going to be fish only like this one here? Because that makes a massive difference in terms of what you're going to be doing. I'll explain. So if it's a non-planted tank, any light's going to do. Almost any light is going to be perfectly fine. If you have a planted aquarium, well, then your light choice is really going to depend upon the types of plants that you're keeping. Are they beginner plants? Are they more low light? Are they high light? Are you using CO2? Things get a little bit more complicated there, but not overly so. And so I'm going to show you how to deal with that as well. But that's the first thing. You've got a lot more options if your tank is not going to be planted. Next thing to consider when it comes to lighting is the color spectrum, and I want to show you exactly what I mean by that. So all of these lights here have the ability to adjust the color spectrum. In other words, do I want the colors to be warmer, more yellows and reds? And that's what you're seeing here. And so this light here, this happens to be an AI blade. This is a more of a high-end light, but I can really have a lot of adjustability when it comes to the color spectrum on the tanks in the gallery. And so with this tank, because there was the red flint sand and the dragonstone, and these barbs are all kind of a redder color, I decided I wanted the color to be a little bit warmer, because the cooler, bluer colors, they weren't looking that good for this particular aquarium. But then you come over here and you look at pretty much the rest of the gallery. These are all bluer, cooler colors. And so in terms of the spectrum, you might be up closer to around 6,000, 5,000 to 6,000 on the color spectrum, where on the warmer colors you might be down in the 2s and the 3s. And of course, if you have the ability to adjust that, you can make the tanks look however you want. And so I really wanted to show off. Eventually these Geophagus are going to get large and they're going to look really awesome. Those blues are really going to show, and it's going to be amazing. Over here, you see I've got these neons, and so there used to be a lot more of them in here, but the diamond heads and the green neons, and I really wanted that blue to pop, and so I added a little bit more blue to that particular tank, and it just shows off so much better. Now you have to be a little bit careful with this, because once you start adding plants, as I've done here, you can't go super extreme. You might wind up with some algae issues, or you might just start putting in colors that, well, just the plants don't really utilize all that well. The plants will utilize color spectrum at the ends of the spectrum. So they really like the reds and the violets. They really like the blues. Once you start getting into the greens and yellows, not quite as much. The other nice thing about these lights, and there are lots of lights like this, and I'm going to kind of take you around the fish room too and show you all the different types of lights that we have. You really want to be able to adjust the light intensity. And so how bright are the lights? These tanks here, I've mentioned this so many times, but the tanks here, they're about at 30% maximum capacity. This one here, the low boy, these are the AI primes. You got the AI blades on the other tanks. This one here is at right around 30% max capacity on some of the settings, and as low as 15 on others. And so what you want to be able to do is adjust the light intensity for your lights. Otherwise, you might wind up with algae issues. The lights might be too bright, might be freaking out your fish. There's all kinds of things that can happen if your lights are too bright. Not to mention the fact if your lights are too dark, it's just not going to look very good, and so that can be a big problem as well. Now, whether you're going to do this with an external timer or the light itself, you're going to want to be able to adjust the light duration. All of our tanks, I've mentioned this so many times in all the years we've been on YouTube, we're about 3 hours in the morning and about 6.5 hours at night. Yes, we do split it because I want the tanks to be on when we're down here. And so that's how I do that. But generally speaking, right around 8 to 9.5 hours is about the right amount of time, whether you've got planted tank or not. to have the lights on. Any more than that, you could start running into algae issues. Your fish might be a little bit stressed, and some of you know what I'm talking about. If you accidentally left the lights on for days on end, you'll be like, why are my fish not moving? Because they don't know when to sleep. They don't know what time is daytime, nighttime, when to rest. And so they just try to take their rest whenever they can. And so really important, make sure that your lights are on a timer, that you're getting consistent on-off times every single time, every single day. That gets your fish used to a schedule. That can help minimize algae. And again, if you don't have plants in your aquarium, you can actually reduce the amount of time that the light's on. Now, this fish room right now is undergoing a major renovation. That's why a lot of the tanks you see here are mostly empty. But so for instance, this low boy, what you see there with the greenery is actually a hair algae that I like to keep in this tank. But there's no plants in here. And so if I started having an algae issue, I could turn these lights, instead of doing 9 hours a day like I just said, I could easily just do 6 hours or 5 hours, which would be perfectly fine. Make sure that the lights come on well ahead of time, for eating, and they stay on long enough so the fish can consume all the food. But if I had to, I could certainly reduce the duration. And all of these lights here are on a simple light timer. And so I'll show you what that looks like, except for the lights that have a timer like in the gallery, they're on their own timer. But I've got those plugged in there, and this entire bank of 40s will turn on and off at the same time. That's the same thing that's going on here. These 20s all turn on and off at the same time. And then the low boy, along with pretty much the rest of the lights in this fish room, all turn on and off based on that timer right there. Now, it's a lot better if you can find a light where the lights just don't pop on and off right away, because that does kind of stress out the fish. Imagine if you were sleeping and all of a sudden somebody turned on the brightest light right in your face every single day. Not the best. Luckily for us in the fish room, the lights are kind of staggered by about a minute or two. And so I think it's the 20 gallons that come on first, these 4 tanks. And so the light in the room starts to come on for all the rest of the tanks. But in the gallery, those lights come on slowly over the course of about 10 minutes. And when they shut off at night, they also shut off slowly over the course of about 10 minutes. All right, so when it comes to lights, you're going to see in this fish room, we have a ton of different lights. Depends on your price point. So I'll give you a really good example. This is a Hydra light right here, and I've really liked these. I've done reviews on them. I'll put the review in the upper right-hand corner. I'll put Amazon affiliate links down for all the possible lights that we use, at least if they're available on Amazon. But that Hydra light, good color spectrum. You can adjust the intensity. It doesn't have the ability, that particular one, to adjust just the on-off unless you're using an external timer. But the Hydra light's for an inexpensive light that has a good color spectrum. It's a really nice option. You can see here we've got some Aquarium lights. We've got some Marine Land, or maybe that's a Beams work. This is a Phoenix Stingray 2. This has been a decent light. Again, you can adjust the intensity a little bit of the color spectrum, but not much. It's not nearly as adjustable as some of the higher end lights. That's been a good light. A lot of our tanks have these old Phoenix Stingrays, the originals. There, it's just on off, and you adjust the the light duration by an external timer. We have some Fluval 3.0s. Now they have the 4.0, but that's on this tank right here, this one over here, and I believe there's one up at the top. Yeah, this one, all adjusted, or all using a Fluval 3.0, fully adjustable, great for plants. High intensity if you want it, but you can turn it down. In fact, you can see even I don't know, maybe you can, hopefully, the difference between the color spectrum on that, which is a lot more cooler color. This one is turned down a little bit. So over there, we have a Fluval Aqua Sky, I believe. And then let's go back over here to the gallery. And like I said, these are all the high-end AI blades on the 125s and the 75, the AI primes, fully adjustable, full intensity adjusting. I mean, these are probably some of the best lights on the market. Like I said, I will put that video where I reviewed all these different lights in the description below, as well as in the upper right hand corner. But as long as you can adjust the duration, that's the most important thing. Adjusting the intensity would probably be the second most important thing. And then if you really want your fish to thrive, if you really want your plants to grow well, be able to adjust the color spectrum, and you're going to be in really great shape. And you don't have to necessarily spend $500, $600, $700 on a light in order to make that happen. You just have to be aware of your options and what that looks like. All right, everyone, so I hope you found that useful. Again, I'll put those videos about lighting in the upper and lower right-hand corner. As always, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.